Hello! Welcome to my video. Today's book, The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan, Book 3 of The Wheel of Time. Big book. Another great installment in the massive and epic series, The Wheel of Time. Let me start off by saying that there was one thing in particular that really bugged me about the previous two installments of this series that was solved in The Dragon Reborn. For the first two installments of the series, many of the main characters have outright refused the call to adventure. You open up an epic fantasy series by introducing the setting, having an inciting incident that causes our adventurers to answer the call to adventure and go on an epic quest against the Dark Lord or to save the world, what have you. Refusing the call to adventure is a common trope and it's growing in popularity, and it can be done well. And that's not to say that Robert Jordan did not do it well, but it's hard to keep the reader invested in a story where the heroes are refusing the call to adventure for 40 plus hours, over 500,000 words. It was getting old very quickly. Our heroes are finally submitting to the fact that they are heroes of prophecy, that they have a great destiny, and the world needs them, and they can't refuse the call to adventure for a moment longer. I, for one, am a happy camper because I was getting sick of reading about how our heroes were rationalizing why they should not be on this adventure. Now that our heroes have submitted to their fate as heroes, we are finally starting to see some character development. Particularly, we are seeing some character development from our young men protagonists, Rand, Perrin, and Matt. Unfortunately, our women protagonists are lagging behind in terms of character development. Some pretty traumatic things have happened to our female protagonists and point of view characters, but sadly that is not translated to great character growth, and it's frustrating. I'm finally starting to see why Robert Jordan has earned the reputation for not writing women characters well. And I'm still not quite sure if I agree that they're not written well, but they for sure are written in a very unflattering way. Without getting into spoilers, I want you to imagine a fantasy setting where all the women in this world act like teenagers, middle schoolers, or women that are triggered on Twitter. Mature women in the Wheel of Time are present, but they're few and far between. Perhaps all the women in Robert Jordan's real life were naggy and immature, but I have a hard time believing that. I'm not a woman hater, and I also found that he writes young men in a very annoying way as well. All of our young men protagonists are dense, they're socially inept, and they lack communication skills. I find this social ineptitude to be humorous, but bad communication has led to many problems in this series, and if the characters would just sit down and talk a little bit, they would avoid a lot of trouble. The Wheel of Time is older than I am. And I find that my generation and the generation following me is more socially awkward. And it's almost like, as future generations grow more socially awkward, the characters in the Wheel of Time grow to be more relatable. Perhaps the women and young women of the 1990s were a little bit more mature. And it seemed more insulting. But I definitely find that 20 years later, children lack more social skills, and the characters in this book seem a lot more relatable. It's a joke, but kinda. Now, let's talk a little bit about romance. Robert Jordan writes over-the-top romantic love fairly well. He's just horrible at writing the courtship phase of relationships. Most of these romances are between young adults, and our characters all seem to be too emotionally immature to jump from flirtatious, innocent teasing to great professions of love in just a few pages. It is very jarring. Before diving into the Wheel of Time, I read a lot of things about how the Wheel of Time is a very well done example of a power creep. Our characters grow in power and ability gradually throughout the series as the enemies they encounter grow more powerful. The stakes remain high despite our characters growing in power in giant strides. It's cool to see our protagonists obtain and refine magical powers and abilities. I very much enjoyed how The Dragon Reborn focused a little bit more on Perrin and Matt. I definitely found that in the previous two books, we seemed to get a lot more things from the perspective of Rand, Nynaeve, and Egwene. Not that they're bad characters, I just find them either annoying or kind of boring. And Perrin and Matt are a lot more interesting to me, so it was nice to see the book seem to focus on these two characters, particularly Perrin. Perrin is my favorite character in the series so far. I love his stoic demeanor. I love his straightforwardness. It was nice to see him get a lot more love in The Dragon Reborn. It wouldn't be a Wheel of Time book if there wasn't loads and loads of exposition and descriptions. And we got to see a lot more of the lore expounded upon in The Dragon Reborn, particularly about the Aiel, our favorite tribe of warrior desert-dwelling gingers, because that makes sense. One of the things I find the most interesting about The Wheel of Time is the narrative is centered on the dragon. The dragon is essentially the messiah of this world, the one who will eventually defeat the Dark One and end the cycle of the Dark One defeating the dragon every time he's reincarnated and reborn. It's been going on for ages and ages, for all time. Obviously, the dragon is the main hero of the Wheel of Time series, but they are not always the focus of each book, particularly The Dragon Reborn. You see a lot less of the dragon in this book, and the story definitely benefits from it. It's nice to see all these other characters get pushed into the spotlight as the dragon kind of is pushed into the background. It's also cool to see how all these different cultures and peoples in the Wheel of Time universe have all these different prophecies and traditions and religious beliefs relating to the dragon. As you dive deeper into the series, it's cool to see how all these different faiths and traditions create a more full picture about the dragon, what they are meant to do. This is my first time reading through the massive 4.4 million word Wheel of Time series, but I can already tell that if I were to reread it, I would definitely see many things foreshadowed, and I would see many things I couldn't have picked up on the first read through. And I'm so excited to one day in the future, probably the far off future, to reread this series and see all these things that are foreshadowed. Like the previous two books in the series, The Dragon Reborn starts off very well. The middle is a bit of a slog. Our heroes encounter a lot of obstacles and enemies and tribulations, but everything comes to a head in a very epic and satisfying climax. The falling action of The Dragon Reborn is done very well. It answered a lot of questions the readers have, and left on a bit of a cliffhanger, but not too much of a cliffhanger that it would annoy you to not instantly jump into the next book. And it's all very satisfying. Nice bow. Epic things are happening in the Wheel of Time series, and things are starting to get real. 3 books down, 12 more to go. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, push the little thumbs up icon. Subscribe to my channel if you want to hear me talk about any other books. Leave a comment about what you liked about The Dragon Reborn. And I'll talk to you guys next time.